So for our fellowship program, we actually have two different types of fellowships, and we're going to talk about those two different types in a moment. But I first wanted to emphasize that it doesn't matter which type of fellowship you apply for, the benefits are the same. So there's a benefit in that you will be able to implement a small fellowship project and you get some financial support for that for about €5,000. But I should stress that the fellowships are for individuals. They are not for organizations. So the fellowship program is not a grant scheme. So we cannot provide funding to organizations. So you have to be an individual to make an application. But of course, we welcome individuals who are supported by or cooperate with organizations. But we often get people asking this question if they can apply on behalf of their organization. The answer is no. It has to be as an individual. And those who are successful to become a fellow, apart from the financial support, fellows get opportunities for training and coaching, get opportunities on certain networking events when all the fellows come together. Sometimes some fellows are supported to go to events in Brussels, for example. And of course, if you're successful, you join the alumni of fellows, which is now up to 181. And you can network amongst all the other fellows. So all those benefits are part of our fellowship package, but you have to decide which kind of fellowship that you would like to apply for, as you can only apply for one. So you have to make that decision. Do you have an idea which can be supported under a community engagement fellowship, or is your idea better supported under a civic digital fellowship? So I want to talk a little bit about the community engagement fellowships, and then Ira will give us some guidance on the civic digital in a moment. So for the community engagement fellowships, these are for individuals who can demonstrate that they have a strong commitment to making a positive change happen in their communities. And we would like to, we hope that some of you that are joining our engagement fellowship, you'll be thinking about contributing to a change process along one of these activity areas. And I'm going to talk about these and give you a few examples. It might be that you want to use your fellowship to work on policy making, and it might be at a national level. We've had many fellows who have worked on, for example, the reformation of youth policies in their country. We also have fellows who've worked particularly on specific tools for policy making. For example, at the moment, we have a fellow who's working on energy poverty assessments with the view to influencing policy in Georgia. But it might be you have ideas to influence or be involved in policy making at the local level. We have a lot of fellows who have successfully worked on local level policy making, for example, to help to set up mechanisms whereby the most vulnerable citizens in the communities are able to better participate in local decision making. Maybe you have ideas for a fellowship which would involve the collection of evidence. That might be evidence towards policy making, evidence on monitoring. We've had fellows who've done interesting work on participatory budget analysis. We have a current fellow who is working on looking at the oversight of a local administration. We also have fellows, for example, who have worked on the data collection around environmental protection. So you might have ideas around collecting local evidence, and maybe that evidence would be involved in be used for monitoring purposes. So we have quite a lot of fellows who successfully have undertaken monitoring of public administration. For example, at the national level, we have a fellow working on the oversight of the administration of justice. So that fellow is working with a group of people building capacity to monitor the work of courts. It may be that you want to look at um, local public services. So you want to monitor services at the local level. And we've had fellows who have worked on monitoring accessibility to public services, particularly for those who, again, who are the most vulnerable in communities. So monitoring public administration is another good area for a fellowship. Or perhaps you would like to use a fellowship to do some capacity development. That might be capacity development of civil society organizations, or maybe of other stakeholders in your community. And we've had a lot of really successful fellowships that have contributed to building capacity, but not just the capacity building itself, but using innovative techniques or methods. So in the last couple of years, we've had a few fellows, for example, who have worked on methodologies for mentoring. We've had fellows building capacity for awareness raising and for undertaking advocacy on say gender issues or more particular issues such as autism. Or perhaps another area where you could use a fellowship is to make civil society organizations themselves more accountable and better linked to constituents. And this particular topic for this call, we'll talk about more in a while, because actually for this topic, we will give additional evaluation points during the evaluation process of your application. But what does it mean, improvement of CSO accountability? Well, this could involve help you as a fellow helping to improve the governance of an organization or organizations. It might be about developing and implementing codes of practice for civil society organizations, or maybe it's about helping organizations to be more transparent through better communication. We currently have a fellow who's working with a group of Ukrainian CSOs, and they're looking at how those organizations can be better accountable for funding that they've received, particularly on dealing with disability issues. We also have another fellow who is working with a small group of organizations on developing safeguarding mechanisms in the work that they carry out with vulnerable groups. We're going to say a bit more about this topic in a while, because I say it is a kind of a highlighted theme for this particular call. But maybe also you can use the Community Engagement Fellowship for strengthening cooperation between CSOs. So that could be capacity building for networking, bringing organizations together.
Simon, just quickly, there is a question in the Q&A which I think it's worth responding to now. Mariam is sharing because it was about one of the examples that you were giving. And in the Q&A, the question is, what was the topic about autism? I missed the point. Thank you. So maybe you can provide just a bit more information on that one.
Yeah, that was just an example of where we had a fellow who was doing building capacity with particular groups in their community to raise awareness on autism. This fellow was working with various people who are affected with autism, have family members with autism, and they wanted to raise awareness on this issue, but weren't sure how. And so the fellow introduced some really innovative methods for raising awareness and help those particular groups to be better organized on campaigning on that issue. So, and you can actually read more about that particular fellowship and actually many of our fellowships on the fellowship website. So you can learn more in the details. We have lots of information to share on what fellows have been doing. During this information session, we're just going to give you a little taste. I've been talking about the
Mariam just shared the link to that particular profile, so you can also have a look there. It is on our fellows website, so you can have a look and get more information about this particular project.
Great. And now, I mean, these are all examples, and these are areas where you could use a fellowship to improve community engagement. But we have a second type of fellowship, which is looking at civic digital. I will ask Ira maybe to come online and say a bit
Yes,
about.
I'm here. Hi, Sam. Shall we go to the next slide? Yes, thank you very much, Simon. Hello, everyone. My name is Irina Velskaya, and within our team, I'm responsible for our civic tech component, which includes the hackathons and the civic digital fellowships. Let me start with a whole idea of what is civic tech, because this is something then one of the most confusing parts when it comes to this. So there is no definition of the civic tech as per se in the world, but we kind of define civic tech as technologies that are developed, technical, so IT solutions that developed for the to address the needs of the communities, to make the governments, to hold the governments accountable, or to improve the quality of the services provided to the citizens, not just anyone, but specifically to the citizens of your home countries, either by the state, or it's often the services that are provided by the civil society itself. So what is called citizen-to-citizen services. In the scope of the civic digital fellowships, we decided to go slightly beyond the concept of the, like civic tech per se. And we want to support those of you who would like to contribute to your technical knowledge in one of the fields, in the field of the development, the field of the design, the field of the open data, and so on, to use on what can be done for the community needs in terms of the technology. So we, as I said, we understand that one of the biggest fight still for the civil society and for the activist, civic tech activists in our countries is legislative changes necessary in this thing, necessary to enable transparency at the e-government, at the governmental level, at the local level, be it local or national. So if you consider running an advocacy campaign, pushing for better or higher quality open data, for improving the quality of the e-services, for cooperating with the government in terms of making the e-government and e-services in your countries better. For if you go for and strive for budgetary transparency, involving some of the opening the data and making it transparent, making this accessible, then you're obviously qualified for the civic digital fellowship. Another very unrelated element to that is when you work when you really want to make some of the data that is somehow available or theoretically available or should be available, to make it machine readable, to make it high quality, or to publish and produce new data. I'll give you also an example to make it clear. For instance, in Georgia, what I learned like yesterday, the declarations of the public officials are still done as PDFs. So the government opens the declarations of the public officials, of the deputies, for instance, but they're still done as a PDF. And even though they're open, they can't be considered as open data. It is possible technically to convert the PDFs into proper CVSO, like data registries. If you're interested to do this, then please do apply. If it is something or you have an idea of a similar kind, please do apply. We also have a fellow right now from 2023 cohort from Ukraine who is working on digitalizing data that was collected by by ecologists in Ukraine who had to flee from the occupied territories, and there is a high there was a high chance that this data on flora and fauna of Ukraine would be lost. So he's working with those scientists, ecologists, to digitalize and publish this data so it's not lost, it can be preserved, it can be further reused. These are just like two examples of how what is meant by, you know, second subtype, let's say, of this, about the data and quality. Most often, in most cases, we do receive the applications from you about with the ideas of civic tech solutions you would like to develop. And this is where you should actually remember about civic tech, and we are happy to support this. We had most of our cases are related actually, and our past civic digital fellows are related with the development of civic tech solutions. But in this case, what you should remember is that a civic tech solution has several characteristics. And one of them, so first it addresses social need. Second, it requires some coding. Third, the IT product at the end of the day needs to have the active user system interaction, and it should be kind of per se non-profitable, or it should be sustainable, but at the same time, you shouldn't try to use it to make a fortune. You know, it's not a mechanism, it's not a way for you to kind of really make the money. It's not a commercial product, let's be honest. I'll put all those kind of characteristics of the civic tech in the chat here, so you can also keep it for your reference. But if you have an idea of developing an IT solution that, again, address some of the community needs, which can vary, and they really depend on the situation in the country or a specific city, or sometimes even town. If you want to develop something that leads to government's accountability, for instance, or improve government transparency, or if, you know, again, the services, you're with us. But there are also cases when you already had some funding to develop solutions, and I won't be exaggerating a lot if I say this, but we might be the only technical assistance projects, at least EU-funded program, that supports your work in rolling out and expanding and promoting and upgrading the existing civic tech solutions. I know that's one of the most difficult parts to find when you already developed a prototype within the hackathon, within some hackathon or some smaller funding, and you launched it, but the MVP usually kind of requires lots of updates. You need to get new users on board. So you need to sometimes train the users in how to use your tool. And yes, you require some support with this. We will also be very eager to help you with this. We had several fellows working on this in the past, and I won't go too far because my colleagues Mariam and Elena will be giving you success stories. And one of the success stories is actually a story of the Civic Digital Fellow, Tiona, from Georgia, who worked on improving the functionality, improving the design, the user interface design, and the backend part, and promoting her civic tech solution among the users in Georgia. With this being said, I promise to post as the next thing the links to the characteristics of the civic tech solution, civic tech product, and pass the floor to my colleagues. I'm here with you if you have any questions.
Maybe I'm thinking we have 3 questions in the Q&A that are worth addressing now because they're very much linked to what we were just discussing. So I think the first one is more for Simon as a reaction to what he was mentioning. So does the proposal, I presume, or the project necessarily need to be connected or directed to a policy change on a national or local level?
No, hopefully, Alessandra, you're getting the idea now that we would, you can make a successful application on a range of issues and contributing to a lot of different kinds of changes. So it might be that if you have an interest in policy making, then you would want to have a fellowship where you influence that policy. So you want some change to happen, and that might be at national level or it could be at local level. But it might be that you're interested in monitoring public administration or monitoring policy. So that's something that you could do in terms of collecting information. Or it might be that, as I've mentioned previously, that you're more interested in contributing to developing kind of capacities within your community. So that will be doing something quite different to working on policy. And Ira has just been talking about lots of interesting things that you could do through the civic digital fellowships, which aren't necessarily related to policy making. So I hope that that's clear. And I was going to also comment on, there was another question, Monica, about the importance of avoiding duplication of projects. We're giving you these examples just to let you know what could be possible, and we will be sharing with you the links to where you can read more about the fellowships endlessly during this session, because we want you to be familiar with what other fellows are doing, because of course we don't want to support kind of cut and paste applications. We don't want you to duplicate, but we would be happy to get applications when you're building on something that's already happened. Ira was just mentioning in terms of civic tech that's one area which we would support. But likewise, in the community engagement, it might be that you've been part of something in your community where change is happening and you want to build on something. So that will be fine. But we really want fellows, our successful fellows, are the ones who demonstrate to us that they're adding some value. They're doing something different that hasn't been done before. So indeed, we really don't want duplication. So it's really good for you to check out what all the other fellows have already done. There was a third question, Monica.
Yeah, this is a more related to civic digital from an anonymous attendee. I'm working as project manager, skilled and experienced in partnerships and technical issues in one of the biggest telco company of the region. But I have never been involved in civic. I don't have civic engagement. So am I eligible for this or not? Maybe I can take this.
Yes, absolutely. As basically, if you look at this way, that's what we are saying, and that civic digital fellows, we kind of look for those who are ready to put their expertise, to use their expertise, technical expertise, sometimes technical background to do some of the civic, or try to get into the civic activity, civic engagement. And yes, many of civic tech enthusiasts and activists, they really come from the for-profit companies, from the commercial sector. I personally also have a huge experience in the commercial sector myself. So kind of that's a normal thing where we gain the technical knowledge that we need there, and then we apply this for civic engagement. Simon will go further about the eligibility criteria, and I think it's very, very clearly defined in the guidelines. So if you open the fellowship guidelines, you will see that the requirements for the civic digital fellows eligibility, they slightly differ. They're kind of, softer in terms of your previous experience in civic engagement as compared to the community engagement fellows.
Yeah, we have another question in the chat, not in the Q&A, also related to civic digital fellows. Or the fellowship, does a media platform digitalization fall under the scope of this?
I think that's one of the trickiest questions that we had. So no, in two ways. First, I'll be, again, very straightforward. As Simon and Monica mentioned from the very beginning, our first and main absolute task, and how I say, not even focus, but, our area where we can work as a project, as a technical assistance project, supporting you, is civil society. We do not work with media, as this is, yes, even though in many of our countries, media often have not-for-profit organization behind them running, and because for various reasons they have to run as non-profits. Unfortunately, that's one of those really areas where we support activism and not media. That's one aspect. The second aspect that should be taken here is if you go into the characteristics of what they said. So a civic tech project has a very strong user system interaction, which requires more than just, reading the news or you know, like leaving a comment or putting a like or sharing in social media. And this is, with my experiences also as a media person, this is what usually, you know, media platforms or websites, media platforms, whatever, this is what they are about. So you don't have a user-generated content there where your users really can, like in citizen journalism, where your users really publish the stories. You don't have the requests sent by the users, you know, to the system, where a system has to produce some results, which leads to further requests and so on, or, you know, somehow use on this. So unfortunately, not.
We have another question which somehow ended up in the answered, but we haven't really addressed it. So is an academic paper addressing a CSO-related subject eligible, or does it need to lean towards practical projects like monitoring or evaluation to be deemed suitable? I mean, I can take that, and then Simon and Dira can add just to give them to give them a moment to breathe. We have that question very often as well, because a lot of our applicants and some of our fellows have very strong academic backgrounds, and they also associate the idea of a fellowship with an academic fellowship. This is not an academic fellowship, and indeed we would not be, it's not that it would necessarily be ineligible, but we would not be scoring highly a proposal that is purely academic, even if it is looking at something related to civil society organizations. So we are always looking for elements that have to do with advocacy campaigns. So you can have research elements into your projects, and we have very often research elements in there, but then something follows. It's not the end point of the project. So it's either raising awareness about something or creating an advocacy campaign around the findings. There needs to be the civic engagement element to it. So yeah, as I said, it's not really a matter of pure eligibility, but we would be looking at it in this way. I don't know if Simon and Dira, you want to add to this?
I can add to this. Basically, as I always explain to my hackathon participants, we have very similar kind of question, because one of the things your proposals, your ideas will be evaluated is the impact. So how the situation changed. So basically, and with the question, when it comes to the research papers or, you know, academic papers, there is always this question, okay, you publish this, and so what? So make sure that when you develop a proposal that includes some of the research, and whether it is an academic paper, whatever, you include this part that would answer, you know, the question, and so what, after you publish. I'll take another question from the Q&A. I see that we are getting more. Okay. Shall the Civic Tech Fellowship, Civic Digital Fellowship offers MVP stage solution that can consider the also idea stage solution and use the fellowship for validation, refinement of the solution design of an MVP. Absolutely. You don't need to have an MVP or even a prototype to apply for the fellowship. It's good if you have some of the kind of ideas that you can attach and share with us, that you have more or less clear vision of the product that you want to develop. Basically, you have the idea of the functionality, you have the idea of, again, of the impact, you know, some of the key functions that it has, you have the idea of the platform, so format and so on. But no, you don't have an MVP. You don't need to have an MVP. And the second question, if both fellowships can be combined. It's a very simple question. You know, first, okay, consists of two answers. Make sure you make only one application. There is only one idea that you can apply with. I think this is kind of simple answer to this. Second, just go and apply. When the assessment is done, very often we have the discussion and we see that this or that idea falls better under the Civic Digital Fellowship, or it falls better under the Community Fellowship. And then we recommend or we change your, let's say, designation when necessary. That's it from my side, Simon.
Thanks, Ira. And I will finish then with the last question. I mean, I'll finish this moment with the last question we have in the chat. Ben, you're asking a question. Does the need on trainings on educating the community on the criteria of skills to the livelihood capabilities acceptable? If I understand rightly, yes, you could certainly. We have had fellows who have worked on building capacity in with particular groups in their communities to help them enter the labor market, or young people wanting to advance themselves in particular careers. We have had those kinds of fellowships, but you would need to make sure that you, as Ira was just highlighting, that you're going to do something that really is going to have impact. Suggesting a fellowship where you just simply do some training with some people rarely leads to a sustainable outcome. So you'd need to somehow pose that question that you have in terms of a fellowship with helping a particular group, and how that training is going to help that group and what's going to happen to them afterwards. And as I've already mentioned, that I mean, all the ideas that you have, you might get them better shaped by looking at what the previous fellows have done. So here there's a snapshot. This is just the first 5 years of the fellowship, where we had 147. You will see that they're spread out across the 6 countries in the region, and covering a variety of sectors and different kinds of actions. So we would really encourage you to see what other fellows have been doing, because I think that helps you maybe to shape your idea, how you want to present the concept of your fellowship. Before going on to the actual process of making an application and how do you do that successfully, I do want to just highlight a couple of the 2 themes for this particular call. You've heard about us describe the 2 different types of fellowship and the kinds of things that you can do with those fellowships. When we are assessing your fellowship application, we of course will see whether your application is relevant to community engagement or civic digital, and whether you fit to the change process that we've just been highlighted. But for this particular course, there's an opportunity to get a kind of extra points in the evaluation process if you are focused on one of these 2 issues. One is on the support for internally displaced persons, IDPs. What this means is it's not about using your fellowship for emergency assistance to IDPs. Our funding for fellowships is not eligible to be used to buy, for example, emergency medical supplies or equipment, or to pay for the transport of IDPs. Okay, so you can't use your fellowship funding to provide to buy those kinds of things for IDPs. But what you can do is you can use your fellowship to support IDPs in their resilience and their own self-reliance. So this might be, for example, helping IDPs to be economically active in the new place where they find themselves. Or it might be assisting IDPs to have better access to public services in the place where they find themselves. Or it might be you using your fellowship to actually provide oversight to the services to IDPs. So support for internally displaced persons will give you some extra points, but absolutely it is not obligatory to do this, but you will get examples. Again, you'll be able to find stories of our fellows who have worked with IDPs. In Ukraine, we've had a fellow who did support IDPs to build their capacity for social entrepreneurship in a certain region. We've had a fellow that was trying to monitor the services provided in Moldova to a particular vulnerable group of IDPs. And in Georgia, we had a fellow who worked with IDPs in terms of building the resilience of parent and child groups. So if you have an interest in supporting IDPs, again, look at our website to see those stories about what fellows have already done. The second theme is the improvement of CSO accountability and linked to constituencies, and we've already talked a bit about this. And I know that sometimes people have some interest but aren't quite sure what it practically means. So we wanted to share with you, I think Monica will help me, and if you share in the chat, we've got some links.
I shared it now.
Yeah, you can have a look at these resources because it helps you to understand, explore this topic of CSO accountability. There is something called the Global Standard Partnership, which is an alliance of organizations worldwide that's trying to promote CSO accountability. And through their website, through their platform, you can learn a lot about codes of practice and standards. And perhaps a bit more locally, there's also the Balkan Civil Society Development Network, which has done a lot of work on CSO accountability. And through their platform, you can read a lot of stories, discussions, and articles on good practices in CSO accountability. So if you have an interest in this area, read more about it. And if you want to make your fellowship project to contribute to the improvement of CSO accountability, this is something else which would help you score more in the evaluation. We will later look at how your concept notes, how your applications are evaluated, and we'll just go through the evaluation grid to highlight some of these things. But that will be a little bit later. We now just want to focus on you as potential fellows and whether you are the kind of person that could make a good fellowship. We hope that all of you who have joined us can tick these boxes, that you fulfill these criteria for being a fellow. You have to be a citizen of one of the 6 Eastern Partnership countries. You have to have a reasonable working knowledge of English. This is because the fellowship program is a regional program and English is the working language of the program. So we do require that. In the concept note application phase, we do ask you to tick the box to say yes, that you do have good English. And if you're invited to the full application stage, we will ask you to provide some documentation to support this claim that you have good English. In our guidelines, we give you some ideas about what you could use to prove that you have good English. It could be a certificate of English language. It might be, for example, a reference letter from a university teacher or from an employer that can vouch for the level of your English. There's lots more in our guidance, the guidelines on the fellowships, which explain about this. But you're not asked in the concept stage, but we do ask you at the full application stage. So we do expect you to have a reasonable level of English. You have to be at least 18 years old, so you can't be younger than 18, but we have no upper limit. So as long as you're at least 18, you can apply. You can't have previously received a fellowship. I think all our fellows know that, so I don't expect them to apply. But most importantly, you need to demonstrate to us that you do have a proven track record. It might be a proven track record in civic tech, or it might be a proven track record in other types of civic activism. And we want to see evidence of that track record by asking you to upload your CV. So your CV is a part of the first stage of the application process. And of course, to be a successful fellow, you must have a really good idea for your fellowship. We've already heard about some previous fellows and their good ideas, but just to help a bit more with that and the kinds of people that we've been awarded fellowships, I'm going to ask Elena and Mariam to contribute here and give us some examples from the countries where they're working and to introduce themselves. Elena, maybe you will start.
Yeah, thanks. My name is Elena Medvedenko. I'm regional liaison in Ukraine, Moldova, and Belarus. So yes, I'm working with the fellows from these regions. And I want to share some success stories about fellows that I'm working with from our previous phase. I would like to start from Natalia Yoroshenko. So she's one of the most benefited our fellows. So her application, from her application was obvious that she's patient with ecosphere and eco area, and her project environmental was really about that, and she showed that her experience that she's gonna to gain when she will travel within countries where nature was impact because of hostilities and the war, that she will gather all this practice and then share with the communities, with the different countries. And yes, she used a tool like comics to show these stories, and it was very interesting to different ages, for different spheres, to understand what the problem and how to solve it. And she was successful in her communication campaign, as her project was mainly this information campaign towards the impact, to show the war impact on the ecosystem of Ukraine, and share different other stories. And at the end, after her project was finished, during our last Rely event, fellows from different countries, from the EAP countries, they interested in this project, and they became winners of the regional project contest, and now they're finishing implementation of the continuation of her project among the EAP countries, different other countries from the region. So yes, she showed in her application that the idea is useful for community and useful to make changes in the region. And the next one was Christina Berlinski. She also very experienced in project management, but within her project, she proposed to study practices in Europe, how to enhance the capacity of local CSOs in the youth and women needs assessment process. So after this research, she was working with her local communities to share the best practices and to help them to work in these areas more professional, or more to benefit from that. And yes, she also showed in her application that she will benefit from this project implementation, that she will raise her experience, and she will work in the area that she already work, maybe not for a long time, but she knows what she will be implementing and how to do best during her fellowship. So that's all about my fellows. More fellows are on our website, as Simon mentioned before.
Super, thanks, Elena. And now, Mariam, let's hear from you. Introduce yourself, thanks.
Thanks, Simon, and hi, everyone. I am Mariam Furashvili, and I act as the regional liaison of the EAP Fellowship Program in Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia. So today I will feature two fellows from my region, and those fellows are distinguished by the results and also the relevant, feasible, and well-targeted projects. So I hope that you may take some inspirations from those stories that we are telling you. So let's start from Teona Tomashvili. She is our Civic Digital Fellow. So she already completed her action, but she's the member of our network, and she was our Civic Digital Fellow. Her project named as AskGovG, on the road to opening up the government data. She's been leading the civic tech project at AskGovG, which is the platform for the public data in Georgia. And she's been advocating this public data accessibility through the use of technology. So she was engaged in the sector for years with the solid experience and expertise. Her fellowship objectives aimed at strengthening the platform by adapting the international good practices to increase the access to the public data, which is unfortunately not always public, accessible, transparent, and most certainly reliable. So to achieve her objective, first she organized the study trip to London to meet the international field professionals and learn more about efficient, tried and tested practices and tech solutions created by the nonprofits internationally. Returned back to Tbilisi, she carried out the user service, collected the feedback from the users, and improved the tool. Afterwards, she conducted the tailored advocacy campaign to promote the tool. All in all, as a result of her project, Teona upgraded the platform, improved the design, the features of the website, so made it more user-friendly, more engaging. Like it's now became the more valuable tool for the activists, journalists, the students, and the general public to go to the website and access public data, which is from the reliable source, because it's also very important whether the information is public and reliable. So why I decided to present this story to you. First, you need to think whether your project proposal fits to your experience. So you need to think of creating some, designing some proposals which are linked to your background, to your skills, interests, and capacities. Then you should think of wise planning of your international study trips, which should benefit to your action and contribute to the objectives that you are willing to achieve within your fellowship project. And also you need to think of the deliverables, the actual deliverables of your project, and then promotion of the deliverables. So it's promoted within the network and within the community you are working for. So the next fellow is Grigor Yeritzian, and Grigor is from the Community Engagement Fellowships. His project was named as Evidence-Based Youth Policy Development in Armenia. And as some Armenian attendees may know that Grigor comes from the youth sector. His project aimed, so obviously his project aimed at promoting the evidence-based youth policies in Armenia by participatory policy analysis. To achieve this objective, he conducted a survey of 200 young people and 10 youth policymakers. And then he organized the study trip to Brussels to learn the best practices of youth policy development and implementation. So returned back to his home country, he crafted the bilingual research paper on youth participation and development and decision. So youth participation and policy development and decision making. After delivering these research findings, he presented this report to the stakeholders. So he organized the stakeholders workshop. She shared the findings with the stakeholders and youngsters, and also the policymakers, so local authorities, for whom he and his team had prepared 22 recommendations to address the gaps and needs which have been identified during the research and meetings and etc., etc. So why this fellowship action was noteworthy for him and for us all, because we all care about that your fellowship makes some impact in your countries. So this is also a very good example that the fellow is targeted to the sector he's coming from. So Grigor comes from the youth sector, and his fellowship project was targeted on youth. So it was linked to his background, capacities, and knowledge. Then he had very good deliverable, the research document, and his research was delivered as the online and offline version of this research document. And this research document had some advocacy campaigns. So it was read by some people, and it increased some discussions regarding the topics that he studied. Also, he had very well-planned study trip to Brussels. So he visited Brussels because this visit contributed to his action and research. So I presented those two examples and stories with the hope that it will give you some inspiration, whether your project proposals are linked to you, linked to your experience, capacities, knowledge, expertise, and etc., etc. You need to think of whether this study trip is needed. Maybe you can use these financial resources for something else, for the workshop, for the visibility, for the better research. Maybe you need a different target audience. Maybe you need other stakeholders for which you need to use those finances. So please be very clear about your sector and about the proposals, and obviously your objectives that you wish and you will to achieve within the fellowship project. Yeah, and also the most importantly is that your project should add some value to your everyday professional life. To conclude, we are very thrilled to see so many enthusiastic professionals from different backgrounds, but we are united with the same passion to contribute to bringing something valuable to our communities. And I wish good luck to all of you, and I very much hope that some of the attendees of today's webinar will become the part of our network and the next cohort of our fellows. So thanks, and back to you, Simon.
Simon, maybe before we move to the application process, there are several questions that in the Q&A that maybe it's better to answer now. Not all of them, some of them are for later for sure, but there is a question from Alexandra. If someone doesn't have a proper track record in civil society, but is willing to start their activism now, well, if we will consider that, and if that's eligible. I don't know if you would like to take that.
Yeah, I mean, as we said, as long as you're above the age of 18, you're eligible to apply. But I think the fellowships are not probably the right place to get support if you really are not, if you're just starting activism. And I think probably the best thing to do is get a bit of experience, do some volunteerism for an organization, to have some kind of track record, because we do score the track record. So we want to see something that you've done on your CV. But we also have had fellows who have been very active from a very young age and can demonstrate that they do have a track record already. So if you feel that you've done something and have a track record, then please make an application. It's not so difficult, but unless you can really prove that you're doing something and the fellowship is going to build upon that, you probably won't be successful. So I would probably recommend that you get involved with other activities at the local level to get a bit of experience with civic activism first.
Maybe just to add to that, so I think you should also not be scared of the wording of track record. You should really think, we are not expecting everyone to have worked as, for example, permanent staff in civil society organizations, right? So I think that was clear. So you take a moment to reflect on whether there are some things that you can highlight from if you volunteered at some point, if you were engaged at some point in community activities, or in your university or in your high school and so on. I mean, if for very young applicants, we do take that into account, and we also look at the motivation and what they are proposing and why they think they can actually do that. They have the capacity to do that, and why they want to address that particular issue. So, yeah, think about it. But indeed, as Simon is saying, we are, on the other hand, scoring experience and the relevance of what you were doing before for the application that you have. There are 4 questions from Paulina. I think 2 of them we will leave for later, but maybe the first 2 we can address now, because they are related to what we were already mentioning. So on the supporting documents, there is a requirement to attach proof of level of English obligatory. What do you consider as such document, excluding certificates?
Yeah, in the guidelines, it gives you more examples of what you'll be able to submit. And let me stress, as I did previously, at the stage of the concept note, you do not need to provide these supporting documents. You only need to provide your CV for the concept note. But if you're successful to move to the full application, If we ask you to do a full application, then you will have to provide the supporting documents. And for the language one, apart from a certificate, I mentioned already that it might be that you have a reference letter from someone who knows you well, like someone from your education or someone that employs you, that can vouch for your level of English, or perhaps you can demonstrate that you undertook some part of your education in English. So, for example, if you did a master's degree somewhere where the language of tuition for that course was English, maybe you have something that can prove that. We're open to different kinds of proof, but we need to have something. And if you read the guidelines, you can learn a little bit more about what proof might be acceptable on that. There was another one, Monica, I think, also from Paulina, about proof documents of collaboration with an organization.
Yes, I think that was very much about the reference letter. As the fellowship is for activists, what kind of collaboration with CSOs do you see as appropriate? And indeed, she was referring to the reference letter.
Yeah, again, this is something that you'll need to upload at the full application stage, and this really helps the evaluation committee to understand the credibility of your action. From time to time, we use the reference letters to check applicants that what they're telling us is actually what has happened. So that's why it's important. But we're very open to any kind of support letters. So it might be that, you know, if you've been a volunteer for an organization, maybe the management of that organization will simply say, yes, this person was a volunteer for us for a couple of years. It might be as an activist that you worked in collaboration with an organization to run a campaign. And so maybe someone from the organization will put that into a reference letter. So it's just a way in which we can verify your activism to see what you've done. Again, in the guidelines, it's explained a little bit more. So I would draw your attention to that. I think the other questions from Paulina were more on the financial things and tax.
Yes, those we can leave for later. I think there are a couple more that maybe we could address now. So how do we monitor? Someone is asking, how do you monitor the implementation of winning projects? Do you just do the final evaluation of deliverables?
That's an interesting question to ask at this stage, but it's good that you hope you're going to be successful, because yes, of course we monitor throughout the implementation. The idea of the fellowships is to help you as a fellow, if you're successful, to help you as a fellow to develop your capacity. So the monitoring process is part of that. For many fellows, implementing a small fellowship project is the first time that they've implemented a project. So our monitoring and our coaching of the fellow helps to learn on that. So we would have the fellowship projects are usually implemented over 6 to 8 months, and we would tend to have at least 3 monitoring calls with the fellows during the implementation. But we also have a kickoff process at the beginning, and we ask fellows to do some reporting. So there's an interim report, and then there's a final report. So we do have a structured system for monitoring, and it's not just about keeping a track of what you're doing and that you're able to achieve the outputs of your fellowship, but it's very much part of the learning process. So that we see the monitoring as a kind of a coaching process for fellows.
Yeah, a very straightforward question, I think. If the previous project was rejected in 2023, is it possible to reapply again with the same project concept with advancing activities and outcome? The rejection criteria was not clear in the attempt of 2023. So the very simple answer there is yes, you can reapply and you can have the same overall concept, but indeed try to improve. I do not know now. I don't think any of us now remembers the exact application, but as long as you have an improved version of your previous project, that should be fine. There is absolutely no restriction there.
And we for those who've already applied but were not successful, if you asked us to give you feedback, we do give some feedback. Maybe from the question you got the feedback, but it wasn't clear to you. So just contact us. You've already contacted us once. Just email to Elena, Mariam, or myself, whoever, and ask those questions, and we'll try to give you more feedback.
Yeah, Also from Kayala, please provide more information about criteria of application selection. Okay, this I think we can still leave for now. And yes, we will share the presentation with webinar participants. So I think now we can we can still leave these two questions in the Q&A because there are some issues that will be addressed later, and we can proceed with the presentation.
Sorry for interrupting, colleagues. There was one more question I answered in writing, but I think it's kind of, I'm not sure if the participants can see the responded questions in the Q&A. So I'll just quickly go through this. So there was a question from Guyane. If the topic of my fellowship can the topic of my fellowship be complementary with the topic of my education thesis, public administration master thesis, or shall I choose a totally different new subjects? And the response is very simple. Basically, one of the evaluation criteria, which are, I have the guidelines actually open. It's page 12 of the guidelines. One of the evaluation criteria says clearly, area of fellowship is relevant to applicant's experience. So that's the answer to your question. Yes, and please make sure that when you apply, when you submit your application and the CV, where you actually show your experience, that your CV or your application, your concept note says, yes, I know what I'm talking about.
Thanks, Ira. I think I think in the chat or somewhere, there was also someone asking, how long is this webinar? We have taken quite a bit of time because it's really, I mean, we know that for those of you who ask questions, you really appreciate getting the detailed answers. Generally, these information sessions are an hour and a half, so we haven't got so much longer. I want to go through the application process, but I think we can do this quite quickly because many of the issues we've already touched upon. For our application process, thanks, Ira, for actually reading out from the guidelines, because we always emphasize people, please read them. They're actually only 15 pages in length, and almost all your questions can be answered in the guidelines. So have a good look at the guidelines, and then you need to prepare your concept note, and you will need to submit your concept note online. We're going to have a look at that in a moment. And after you've submitted your concept note, then we will do an evaluation. And only those concept notes which pass the concept note evaluation will be, only those applicants will be asked to make a full application. So steps 4 and 5 of the application process are limited to those who are invited to take part. And we can tell you that on the whole, about only 25% of all of those who submit a concept note are then
I'm afraid we lost Simon. Simon, we lost you there, I'm afraid. I think 25% is the last thing we heard.
Oh, okay. Apologies. I'm being told by my system that my connection is unstable. So yeah, only 25% of applicants pass the concept note stage. So it's really important to try to make that your application as strong as possible. But if you are invited to the next stage, you'll receive a link where you will be able to access the full application form. And at that point, you'll need to complete the full application and upload the various supporting documents, which we've already talked about, and you can read more about in the guidelines. So the first step, or the second step, is about completing the online concept note form. We do ask you to use the online form, which is accessible through our website. It's a really simple online form. There are just about 10 questions, and it covers 3 basic sections. We ask you to tell us about yourself. We need to learn about your experience and motivation, and that's where we ask you to upload your CV. And of course, we want to understand what is the purpose of your fellowship. So the fellowship concept note form is really simple to fill in, but you need to have thought about it before you start doing it, because you have limited space on the online form to fill in. So you need to use the space carefully to present your ideas. While you are filling in your concept note, as long as you do not click on the submit button, you can return to the concept note and make changes or add things. But as soon as you click on the submit button, your application will be made, and you will no longer be able to return to your concept note. And you won't be able to make a second concept note application. We only accept one application. You will, however, receive by email, you should receive a copy of your concept note. So if you're asked to do a full application, you'll obviously have something to refer back to so you can remember what you applied for. But the application process is really simple. But what we do when we evaluate, we really look for the quality of the applications. This is why we encourage you to think as much as possible about what you want to put into your application. You need to be thinking about, you make sure that you're eligible, all the eligibility criteria, you need to tick all those boxes, and you need to make sure that your fellowship project idea, the concept, that it's actually relevant. You need to make sure that as you go through the concept note, you're going to get maximum score or highest score as possible, and to think about what lessons you might have learned by reading about the other fellows. So we want you to ask these questions about the purpose of your fellowship. Is your fellowship really going to make a difference? Are you adding something, adding some value through your fellowship? Who's going to benefit from the fellowship? Can you clearly identify who the beneficiaries will be? We want you to make sure that everything is proven to be eligible. So don't just tick the box to say that you have good English, and when you come to make the full application, you can't prove it. It's really important. We need to make sure that we understand your motivations and your background, and we see that from your CV. So these are important parts of the application. Then we've mentioned this a few times in the guidance, the guidelines for the fellowships. You can find the evaluation grid, page 12, according to ERA. So if you have a look at the evaluation grid, it's very clear here that there are 5 areas where we give a maximum of 3 points. So you want to try to maximize the number of points you get on each of these questions around your experience and motivation, around the purpose of your fellowship, about the relevance of your fellowship, whether your fellowship idea outcome is clear, and whether there are clear beneficiaries. So, when you're thinking about your concept note, look at this grid, score yourself. Are you going to get a high score? And then lastly, here you see on the grid that we will be awarding extra points to IDPs, or on contributing to CSO accountability and linked to consistencies.
Can I just add one thing here, Simon, just very quickly? I mean, you were already mentioning it for the annual themes. Please focus on making an application that makes sense. Do not focus on getting the extra points. Because in any case, for the annual themes, if what you do in any case addresses one of those annual themes, and that makes sense for you, then it's great. But don't artificially do that, because in any case, in the evaluation committee, we will, if we see that something is done in a way artificially when it comes to the annual themes, we will not be awarding those points. And you might be losing additional points because your concept is not coherent or consistent enough. So focus on making a very strong application and think about this only if relevant for what you do. And don't try to show that you're addressing all of them at the same time and making like a ratatouille of everything. So don't focus on that too much. We want to see applications that make sense for the applicant and that make sense in terms of activities, just to add that.
Thanks, Monica. And indeed, in the guideline, it really stresses that if you're going to claim that your fellowship project contributes to these annual themes, it must be as proven by the other parts of your concept note. exactly as Monica was saying. And I mean, I've already emphasized that unfortunately, not everyone passes the concept note stage. In the very last call, we had 209 concept notes, and 54 of those were invited to make full applications. So it's a very competitive process. You know, these are common reasons for failure, just simply that applicants are not eligible. You know, maybe they're not even citizens of one of the 6 countries. Or they are presenting an idea which really is unclear or unrealistic, that it's not feasible. You know, the change that the applicant wants to make is beyond the scope of their capacities or beyond such a fellowship. So you really have to make sure that the purpose of your fellowship is realistic and clear. As we've talked about this already, that quite a few applications are rejected because it's impossible for the evaluation committee to make a link between what's being proposed and the background of the fellow. We want to see that in some way you as a fellow is linked to the topic of your fellowship project. And sometimes the proposed beneficiaries are really not clear at all. That it's very kind of vague that some people will benefit. So you know, be aware of these very simple, common failures. And I think if you, again, look at what other fellows have done, or read about the fellowship stories on our website, you will see a lot more concretely of what others have done. Just to emphasize, before we come to finishing off the last of the Q&A responses, just to let you know that I already mentioned that once you've done your online application, you'll be informed of whether you've passed to the next stage. So towards the end of December or beginning of January, you'll be informed if you've passed or not. And at that moment, you then have 3 or 4 weeks in an incubation period, and you'll be able to use that time to develop your full application. We will send you a link to the full application form, and you'll be able to have a look at that form, and you'll see that you'll have to develop a full application by developing a full set of activities to achieve a clear objective of your fellowship. You'll need to create a budget for your fellowship, a work plan, and be very clear on what the outputs will be. In the full application, we also ask for all of the supporting documents to be uploaded. So in the guidelines, you can read much more about the full application process, about how you design a set of activities, what kind of objective, how would you word your objective, how you need to develop your budget. We'll provide you a template for that. So there's a lot of things in the guidelines which helps you on the full application stage. Generally, at this point, we don't talk too much on that because it will only apply to some of you who are successful. And if you are successful in the incubation stage, we can provide a lot more information about how to make a full application. So I'm going to leave this slide up on the timeline. And while we have this slide up, I think maybe we can open up for Q&A and to revisit some of the questions we didn't yet answer, because there were some very practical questions about money and taxes and things like that. But I think here the timeline is kind of self-explanatory. The important thing for all of you is to make sure that you make your concept note application before the 27th or by the 27th of December, because that's when the submissions will close for these concept notes.
Yeah, so maybe we can go indeed back to the Q&A to address the remaining questions. 2 questions from Paulina on financial and tax issues. How should payments be made for contractors, for example, for communication and visibility costs?
Okay, I can do that one. I think Monica might get you to answer the tax one. Okay, thanks a lot, Paulina, for this. If you're awarded a fellowship, we have a kickoff process where we help you and guide you on how to do things like making payments. But to let you know that as an individual, fellows are provided funds in 2 tranches. So you receive one lot of money at the beginning of your fellowship, and then another lot, about another halfway through. And as the individual responsible for those funds, it will be up to you as the individual fellow to make payments to anyone who helps you with your fellowship. So if you need to get the assistance of a particular expert, or for example, a designer, you will need to make a very simple agreement with that person, make a contract with them, and then you'll be responsible for paying that person. So you will make those payments. The same as if you are, for example, you, for communication purposes, needing to produce materials for communication, or wanting to pay for boosts on your social media, those kinds of costs, you as a fellow will be making those payments yourself. And we have a financial reporting process, which we will explain to fellows. You'll be asked to provide the proof of the payments that you make. But as the fellow, you're responsible for making those payments. So it'll be you as the fellow who is doing that. I hope that helps on that question, Paulina. Now on the tax issue.
On the tax issue, Paulina is asking what tax system applies under the program, because the fellowship goes to a person, not to a CSO or charity, and if it has to be declared, the person has to pay relevant taxes, and depending on the form of the agreement, the percentage of taxes applying can vary. So just in a way, it's a simple question, because it is you are liable, you are responsible for paying tax in your country. So you will know what tax you need to pay. Now, indeed, this will be if you are selected, the contract will be with you as individual, not with a civil society organization. We are covering 6 countries with changing policies. We cannot really give very specific guidance on your own taxes, but for sure you have to pay taxes in your countries. And as to what as to the form of the agreement, this is something that there is, I presume there is some flexibility there, but we have a standard fellowship agreement. But the legal form that this takes in your countries can differ. So I think this is really something to discuss at a later stage if you are indeed selected, because there is no simple, clear-cut answer to this. But what I can tell you is very simple and clear-cut, is that the tax system of your country applies, and you remain responsible and you remain liable to pay tax in your countries. So this is, I hope this at least clarifies to some extent. I understand that in Ukraine you have different forms, contractual forms. It's the same in other countries as well, but this is really to be discussed at a much later stage, and we do that normally on a case-by-case basis. So going back, Kayla,
Sorry, Monica, there's also another question actually on the finances. Maybe we can just deal with that one now. Someone is asking the relevant money or compensation being allocated for the fellowship. Is it provided at the launch or during or after the implementation? If you are successful, you'll be asked to sign a fellowship agreement, and part of that agreement includes your personal, the bank details from where you want funding sent to. And we will then send you the funding in 2 tranches. So there's 2 parts. You receive about 50% of your funding at the beginning. When you start your fellowship, it'll be sent to the bank account details that you provide to us. And then after you've done your interim reporting, so about halfway through your fellowship project, as long as everything is on track and we're satisfied with what you're doing, we'll then send you the second tranche. So that'll be about halfway through the implementation process. So that's how you receive the funding.
And maybe just to clarify one thing still related to this question, because the wording is around compensation. So this will not include any compensation to the fellow. It's not, you will not be getting money for yourself. You will be getting money to cover the activities that you need to cover. So this is something that is also really important to underline, because I understand that it can be confusing. The fellowships are not grants, and we as a technical assistance project cannot give grants. So you will not be paying yourself in any way from the fellowship budget. Just to clarify, because I saw that there was this kind of ambiguity around compensation, but in terms of the schedule for payments, I think, yeah, Simon clarified that it's generally 2 payments that we have. There is still a question on the prior experience, and if an applicant does from Shafak. So if an applicant doesn't have prior experience about the presented project, but is curious and determined about it, will she fail? So I think we were kind of discussing this already. No, there is no, you will not automatically fail, but you need to convince us that having no prior experience, you are still capable of implementing that project. And also it would be important for us to understand why you have a shift in interest. I mean, people change, people evolve. So it's fine if you want to explore maybe areas that you haven't been involved in, but we need to be convinced that you will be capable of doing that, and we need to understand why you want to do that. And you can, within your fellowship, you can get support from other professionals, from other people with certain things. But we also don't want to see an application that basically says the fellow is just a coordinator, someone who basically manages other people to deliver everything for him or her. So yeah, think about how you would be presenting your motivation, and whether you're really indeed capable of finalizing something, of taking to fruition something that you don't really know that much about.
And also, I think if you have any kind of hesitations about whether you should make an application or not, and it's always a good thing to talk to people around you, talk to colleagues, talk to friends, talk about this and get them to give you advice about whether, how you can make your application stronger than it is, or maybe they will say, oh, wait for another year of experience. But we like that you're determined, and we will welcome you to apply.
I don't think we have any other questions in the Q&A or the chat. I don't know if anyone wants to take the floor. We have still 25 participants with us.
We will be posting frequently asked questions through our website and social media over the next couple of weeks. So if people don't have questions now, sometimes people send them in to us. So we're happy to take questions through our emails if you want to ask questions. But it seems that we're okay for now.
Yeah, I think we were addressing a lot of questions as we were progressing with the presentation. So I imagine that's it. Maybe we stop recording.
Okay, thank you.